I think it's behaving fairly this morning. I would have expected maybe down 1%, but I think the reality is if this blockade can be implemented in such a way that the ceasefire is not broken, it's fine. I think that's the risk, though, is that this just causes some degree of escalation.
World War II, annualized returns 17% per year. Korean War, 18% per year. Vietnam, single digit, 6% per year. Gulf War, 12% per year. Iraq War, 10% per year, all up. Stock markets do well in military conflict, don't they?
They have in the past, and I think they could do again over time with this one as well. Russia, Ukraine have been in conflict, and stocks have generally done pretty well. I think this time, though, we got to be a little bit cautious because I feel like this is more, once again, a shifting of the world order, and some of the prior conflicts actually shifted the world order heavily in favor of the U.S. This seems to be kind of continuing this theme of deglobalization.
Where are people going for safety or hedging at the moment? I mean, you look at the dollar, it had a great week last week. You look at Bitcoin, down about 1%. Where are people diversifying, if you will, away from exposure to equities?
You know, things that I still like are what we've been calling production for security. So anything that the U.S. needs to produce domestically, they should be buying. You look at Intel. Intel had a phenomenal week. That would be in there. I think energy companies, rare earths, critical minerals. I think you're going to see some, good plays continuing in the nuclear sector. You're seeing the same thing in Europe. You're seeing Nokia do well, BP, Shell. So I think everyone's going, what do countries need to make more of their own? Buy those stocks. Those companies will benefit from this kind of deglobalization.
So if the ceasefire holds, you say, hey, look, even if we're able to successfully block the Strait of Hormuz, no big deal?
I think there's only been 3 or 4 ships going through as it is. So if it kind of goes smoothly, no big deal. The positive side would be if we're actually in there clearing out mines, that would be an awesome step forward, right? All of a sudden, you're potentially opening it. The flip side, the negative side would be if we, get China involved somehow. What things could go wrong, or does this cause the Houthis to do something in the Red Sea? That's to me, it's the escalation risk, or if Iran goes back after Saudi Arabia's pipeline. So I could see this playing either way. I think that's what we're all sitting there watching is, one, what does the military actually do? What does this blockade look like? And from there, we'll get a better sense of what the risks are.
I mean, I think that's the big question. You can say it, but in practice, how do we block Iranian oil from getting to the rest of the world? I think you bring up an excellent point with China, because I think the one country here that could get really hurt is China, because how would they get their oil? It's heavily dependent on Iran.
Right. So now China, though, did stockpile, I think, 1 billion barrels of oil. I'm sure they're depleting some of that. So they've got some wiggle room there. The other thing that we don't know is how much economic pressure this really puts on Iran. Clearly, it puts economic pressure, but do they have 1 month of savings, 3 months of savings, 6 months of savings? Have they struck deals? I think it's not going to work as well economically as the administration
I'm going to get to the earnings season here in a moment, but Peter Tchir, I think we need to clarify this. I thought Nathan was great this morning on this. We have moved from the hysteria of a blockade. I think it was 2 days ago. Correct me, Alexis, if I'm wrong. It was Red Sox. It was a long weekend. We've moved from a total blockade, the world's coming to an end, to now a blockade of Iranian port traffic, which AI tells me is 10 to 11% of the oil flow of the Persian Gulf. So we're not blockading Kuwait. We're blockading 1 in 11 barrels, 1 in 10 barrels, right?
Right. And I think that's, to me, the one thing, a couple of our CIA people in particular are always careful about this, but some of our generals as well, is everything that is said by either the president or the Secretary of War has a political angle. Everything that the military says and does is meant to be apolitical. So that's where you're getting the real story of what's going on.
What's the real story right now?
That we don't know, I think, until we see what actually gets put out there in display, what we're actually doing. Okay. And again, I would love to see our ships go into the strait and actually do the mine sweeping. I think that would be great.
Are they at risk if they do that? What do your admirals and generals say?
I think they're definitely at risk. And that is, what I think everyone's trying to figure out is we've had these 3 or 4 days or maybe a week where both sides are bringing out more weapons. Who has what? It's kind of like those old 6-shooter movies, everyone's counting the bullets. I think we're trying to figure out what Iran has left. They're trying to figure out what we have.
John Bolton with Bloomberg This Weekend. We're going to play that later. Really brilliant interview with the tensions here in Hormuz. Dr. Bolton didn't mince words at all. Okay, I want to get back to the earnings season. Goldman Sachs starting us off in 20 minutes as well. I saw in the zeitgeist this weekend some number, which of course I can't remember because I had a beverage in my hand. Let's go to AI, Peter Tchir. Mag 7 makes up 40% of earnings growth, the growthiness of earnings 2 years ago. Now they maybe make up 20-some percent. Is that diminishing, or are we going to have a Mag 7 earnings growth this time around?
You know, I think the Mag 7 encompasses some companies that aren't necessarily part of the AI story the way they once were, right? You're seeing software kind of get hit. You saw Mythos come out, you know, the Anthropic latest release, and everyone's talking about that. It dropped not just the IGV, which is a software ETF, but Cyber, CIBR, which is a cyber ETF. So you saw that, and yet the chip stocks are doing really well. So maybe this is just telling you, if AI gets good fast, they're going to need more chips, we're going to need more data centers, more AI processing, and it's going to diffuse who benefits those.
Is there a broadening of the market into April? Bank earnings, tech earnings, everybody else after that. Is there a legitimate broadening?
There should be. I think we might finally be hitting the stage where the benefits of AI don't just accrue to a few AI companies, they accrue to the companies that are using them.
Peter Tchir with us with Academy Securities, Jean Boivin, BlackRock, coming up, an extended conversation with Dr. Boivin, the view of the global economics from the desk at BlackRock as well. Henrietta Trey's to be along later, Lori Calvasina at some point in the show. I don't know when.
Boy, do we have a lineup? Do we have a lineup or what?
They've been on fire. You know what it is?
What?
Let's be honest. Winter and spring interns are always better than summer interns.
Oh, that's not
true. Because they're not in the bars. I mean, there's a big difference.
Okay.
I mean, they're more productive on Thursday and Friday. That's all there is to it.
There's something
Alexis
to
Christophorus with Peter Tchir.
I'm glad we brought up AI because I want to talk about AI and how it relates to the banks. I mean, I think we all know trading volume was probably off the charts because of what's happening with the war. So the banks made a lot of big money there. But are we going to find out AI's impact on the banks during this earnings season, do you think?
Might be early, but again, I think you're going to see some positive messaging that they're getting some benefits, some efficiencies from this. I think the next wave, too, will be probably a little bit early, but you're going to see, I think, a lot more M&A activity, more IPO activity, that pick up in and around this space. Again, also, I think in and around the new military, as you start thinking about there's going to be a push for drones domestically, globally, right? I think that's one thing that comes out of this. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some interesting private equity deals to get done, some IPOs, some M&A activity. So I'm excited on that prospect.